Hello and welcome to UC Today. My name is David Dungay. We are back for another Microsoft Teams update. We are fresh off the back of ISE, which was last week in Barcelona, with loads of new exciting things coming out of the Microsoft ecosystem. But before we dive into that, should we do a quick round of who's in the room? We have, of course, Mr. Tom Arbuthnot, as always, Amanda Sterner, Satish Upadhyaya, Kevin Keeler, Ryan Herbst, and Josh Blaylock. Welcome, everyone. Hope you're well.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, well, good. Thanks. Good turnout today.
It is. It's a busy one today. Let's kick off the show then. Let's go straight into ISE new hardware from the show. Of course, ISE is always like a big stomping ground for kind of new hardware, new devices to pick up and play with. There was a few that sort of caught my eye around Jabra. Of course, Shure, MaxHub, and Logi have all had new devices as well. But should we go to Ryan and to give us your kind of overview? What were your key highlights from the show? What did you make of this year's crop of devices?
Well, I had major FOMO for not being there, so I'll certainly, I know quite a few of you were there, but certainly some major announcements on the Teams-certified hardware side, including the PanaCast. We've got Josh here, so I'm going to let Josh chat a bit about PanaCast 40 VBS, which is super exciting. Shure's announcement, I think Shure brings something really interesting to this ecosystem and their approach, which is to bring devices and bundles that can work in specialty spaces, but really in traditional rooms without, I think, the traditional kind of effort that's been involved in configuring them. So they're bringing kind of a auto provisioning of what historically required quite a bit of kind of tooling and in-room provisioning. And so that's exciting. I think their approach and the kits that they're doing in conjunction with Hudley. And I think Hudley's announcement also exciting. I think as we're all very, very interested in multi-camera AI-based experiences, and watching Hudley's Crew Kit expand to support 5 was really exciting. And MaxHub's massive 92-inch Teams room all in one, and the idea of what you can do with this category of all in one, which is super popular and keeps growing both with Android and Windows boards. Super cool. And then certainly people got to put their hands on Logitech Rally board, which is a super exciting product, has some unique elements. But yeah, I would love Tom, kind of what your take on you got to spend some upfront and some personal close time with some of these devices. Kind of would love your thoughts.
Yeah, it was a really good show for hardware. So it was interesting. Like you said, boards seem to be the overriding theme, but we've now got Windows MTR boards. So that kind of plugs the gap for people that wanted the Windows MTR experience, but in an all-in-one. So Yealink and MaxHub were showing off those. MaxHub, I saw the massive 92-inch, like it's basically like a front row all-in-one. It's pretty crazy to look at. So that was cool. And as you say, Shure's interesting because they're bringing their audio hardware expertise into a full bundle kit. So it's just like you can buy the kit, and so they tell me it also magically configures, and we'll see when I get hands on. But because I'm definitely not an AV engineer, but it looked really nice, and they've come out swinging because they've got a full portfolio of options. So usually you see OEMs come in with like a room and then a couple more, whereas they've got kind of the whole, I think 4 different options with the Hudley cameras. So they come out MultiCam day one, structured audio day one. But yeah, I think boards were definitely the theme of the show, and a bit more BYOD was interesting as well. Like the fact that BYOD is now kind of a bit more accepted as a reality of customers are going to have MTR and BYOD. It feels like more BYOD conversations were happening, including Cisco had a BYOD bar for the first time, which is interesting.
So quick question from me on that, Tom, back to you. Obviously we're seeing everything seems to be about BYOD, as you say. When does an AV sort of team or IT team know when to go from BYOD to a native Teams solution? What's that inflection point? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, this is This is an interesting conversation at the show because there's a lot of debates on this. I mean, Microsoft will definitely tell you that MTR is always the best and most premium experience. You come in, you one-click join, and everything's going to just automatically work. But certainly, a lot of customers are not going to put MTRs in every single room, and they want a BYD experience. So Microsoft have been investing in that experience as well. So if you've got shared device and/or premium licenses, you're starting to see things like speech recognition and stage on BYOD. And actually, some of the BYD kit now can provide power as well, can do everything over one USB-C. So it's a lot slicker than it was 3 or 4 years ago, where you were fiddling for USB-A, USB-C, HDMI, and then power as well. So I think this is a debate we'll continue to see. I think my reality with customers is there's always going to be some kind of percentage inflection point where they're like, we're doing 40% MTR and the rest is BYOD, or some variant of that. I haven't seen anybody go kind of 100% hardcore at any scale, one way or the other. Like everything is MTR everywhere. I don't know if Ryan or Josh have seen any of those extremes, but I tend to see a mix.
No, it usually is a mix, right? And where there's a solid BYOD need, it's solid. It doesn't end up all the time evolving. It can evolve toward a room system at some point. I think that's where insights from your platforms are going to help when it comes to the desire to upgrade a lot of those rooms. But in general, a BYOD room has a specific use case in that regard, and that's kind of where you pick a device that brings both capabilities, right? You've got a room system if you need it, but you can also BYOD if you don't. So that's what I see. That's what I see in general when it comes to that question.
Interestingly, historically these were financial decisions largely, and now it's not necessarily that. The price kind of delta has evaporated, and so some of these decisions around BYOD are more for a customer who's just hasn't prioritized a particular service, and so it's more around interoperability and to some degree an experience that they're looking for, because you can bring a full room system into the mix these days in the in the sub $1,000 or $1,000 to $2,000 range, and so it's really less about price.
Yeah, the other thing is some of the modern BYOD bars can be then retrofitted up to either literally with software changes because they've got the hardware built into them, or with adding a compute unit into a fuller MTR experience. So there's a nice opportunity there to say, we'll start with BYOD and we'll pick the top 20 and bump them up to MTR potentially.
And that's actually, on the Panicast 40 VBS side of it, it's in rooms that were, too smaller than maybe like a USB would have called for Panicast 50, which is a wider bar, where you need something smaller, more affordable, but that can do BYOD at the same time. That category is becoming more and more prevalent, I think, throughout the ecosystem of provide both options, but at a price point that makes sense for those spaces. And to Ryan's point, the delta there is just shrinking. So
maybe that's a good segue into our next topic: Microsoft Teams Rooms Express Install. What is Express Install? Of course, this is a sort of a low-cost, all-encompassing solution, which is a sort of a plug-and-play all types of different rooms. Who wants to take us on that one? Josh, do you want to take us through Express Install?
Yeah, so it's a new archetype, right? For Microsoft, kind of came out a while back with archetypes that back at the Hive, they were able to say, hey, we've got these needs across the globe. We need to define key areas, key types of rooms for a large room, a boardroom, whatever. And so this is kind of the latest there, where they've identified this need both for themselves and customers to really decrease install time, configuration time, decrease the impact to the environment, the room, in terms of putting holes in walls, installation concerns there. Bring costs down is the other kind of tenet of these Express install rooms, and a return on investment, or the ability to keep these rooms flexible from that standpoint. So the things that will define these rooms are going to be, they're they're affordable. They're really affordable compared to others. B, you can put them, and hopefully an hour or less, you will have them up and running and installed. You are able to use a Salamander Acadia table stand or a wall system or something that, again, allows you to put your display, the bar, everything on one unit instead of it being attached to the wall and more permanent. That also allows you to move it easier if you need to move it between different rooms as your return to office mandates reveal that our real estate is changing a lot. Let's shift things around. So those basic tenets are kind of what make up those express installs. They are geared towards smaller spaces with a more simple use case, right? But when you can just say, here we go, stand, display, bar, we're off to the races in an hour, that's a pretty easy story to tell. And I think we saw that across the floor at ISE, actually. There was a lot of folks aligning with that message, Jabra included, but several others from the that were called out. They had express install options. I saw at the Microsoft booth, they had an example of it, but using a Surface Hub. Yeah.
Yeah, Logi was showing theirs, MaxHub was showing theirs, and I think the idea is to cut the effort, and not just the AV Pro effort, but the install effort of mounting and running extra runs and all that stuff into something you can say an hour is really impressive. Unbox, mount, and no special skills. We were talking about the structured audio and the complexities, to reduce all that down, particularly for these small room use cases. That a bar is, and a mounted bar at that, is a perfectly serviceable, or an all-in-one.
These are combinations, I guess, thought out combinations of team certified device manufacturer plus mounts and displays. And so I guess it was possible to do things like this in the past, but you had to kind of figure it out on your own, or an integrator had to kind of figure it out to some degree. And there's actually purpose-built hardware in some instances that are being built specifically to accommodate kind of what they're trying to do. And so certainly the all-in-one boards kind of fit into this concept by default, when you put them on a stand on that side. So they're kind of express installed by default. But I think the other versions of this, which we're seeing, which are the things that could be pre-configured outside of a space by a customer or by a partner, and then brought in for rapid install in an elegant, thoughtful way, is exciting, and certainly has an impact on not just time, but installation expense as well.
And I mean, as Microsoft has called out on the front, right? It's for those looking for a little more concreteness with it. They're going to end up providing some examples, right? Some templates for it, but it's not like you're going to go and say, "Oh, I'm picking out this exact express." It's going to be up to providers, OEMs, et cetera, to go and work to build bundles that are meaningful in the express install space. But it's really it's a concept. It's a concept that addresses a few simple tenets.
Yeah, it's a customer conversation starter of, I can do rooms in under an hour and get it all shipped to me and up and running. I didn't appreciate that. Potentially I thought that was multiple days and retrofitting the room and mounting the screen, and actually it can be a lot simpler.
So, should we move on to our next topic? I think we've covered boards, haven't we? So, Miracast was one of the other ones. It's coming to Teams rooms on Windows. We haven't got a public ETA yet. What is this? Well, of course, this is being able to wirelessly share content from your PC to your Teams room. Tom, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think you've got it there. So we covered the Windows boards. The only thing to add on there is Microsoft previewed the idea that they would have Edge browser running web apps on the board. So back in the days of the Surface Hub, when it ran apps, we had apps on the Surface Hub, but it was exclusive to Surface Hub. Now all the Windows MTR boards will eventually get Edge-based web apps, and eventually that will come to MTR OA as well, which is a nice thing for customers. So we'll see what gets used in those use cases, but potentially third-party apps as web apps, which is really nice. And then Miracast is just a nice backport. We've already got Teams casting, but there's a certain amount of insider knowledge of I go into Teams and I cast from Teams, versus Miracast is a more commonly understood Windows level casting experience. So nice to see that coming to the MTROW boards, or MTROW everything as well.
let's go to MultiCam next then. This is, of course, now generally available on Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows. Now, what is this? This is allowing participants to, or remote participants to view multiple views within complex environments. What is that? That might be a very large meeting space, or it might be like something like a classroom, for example. Tom, take us through this. Why is this significant?
Yeah, we've been waiting on this a long time. So the idea of having multiple cameras in rooms, and not just the fact you can plug in multiple cameras, but dealing with camera selection, either manual camera selection, like the remote participant chooses which view they would want to have, or potentially clever auto selection, like cameras picking the right framing or the right person. So this is multi-camera support coming generally available to MTR on Windows. And we've also seen both in the past and recently at the show, different OEMs on the Android space bringing their versions of multicam. The difference being they're kind of muxing the cameras in their bar or board. In this scenario, it's the Windows MTR taking in multiple cameras and dealing with the different camera angles.
Yeah, Tom, I think you're right. As you kind of, I think this is exciting in itself. I think the ability for somebody to pick the right angle if I'm participating in a meeting in a large space and want to see a particular view. But I think playing it forward, as you said, the idea that AI in the future could help make these selections in large spaces, is where it gets even more exciting for me. And that's certainly not what's announced. That's not in a published roadmap, but I think you could imagine that that's a direction that's being considered.
Yeah, I mean, Logitech was doing something quite interesting there with their rally cam as well. Obviously, the onus was back on the presenter to control that sort of multi camera angle as well, which was quite interesting. Let's move on to MDEP. We've been talking about MDEP for quite some time now. Last week, MDEP was the talk of the town, shall we say, where we saw all the new OEMs partnering with Microsoft on this. And this is really exciting for me. We're going to see some really exciting innovations on the sort of Android-based open platform here. Tom, take us through MDEP. We saw, I think it was 12 or so sort of partners launch. What's going on there?
Yeah, so just as a quick recap, because we talked about it before, MDEP is Microsoft's baked variant of an Android release, essentially. So they take the Android open source project, they maintain it, manage it, patch it, add some special stuff that they want to add, and then they offer that to the OEMs and ODMs. So that's the people who make the room systems, and potentially not just Teams, but could be Zoom rooms, could be other devices running Android. So Microsoft are kind of talking to all the Teams OEMs, and they just announced partnerships with Crestron and Owl Labs. And then on the kind of more the ODM side, IDEA, and also CVTE, and then also with Capgem on some kind of like software activities with MDEP as well, which is interesting. But the reason it's the talk of the ISE show, because it's interesting. Microsoft are, pushing to be the favored enterprise Android, and then there's other Teams OEMs in market who have done a lot to, build their own Android releases. So your Logis and your Polys have put a lot of Android investment in, Neat, people like that. So who's doing MDEP, who's not, how it's all going? It's really an industry conversation. From a customer perspective, it'll be interesting to see if customers start recognizing MDEP as a brand, and if that helps Android, further penetrate the enterprise market, where traditionally it's been a bit of a conversation every time to be like, who's maintaining Android? How's it secure? How's it patched? How's it managed? Part of MDEP's proposition is they will take accountability and responsibility of maintaining, and then part of the relationship of partnership on MDEP is the OEM has to be responsible for pushing those patches through to the device.
I mean, that's a key part of the conversation, right? Is that when it comes to customers adopting Android across the board, what's been a traditionally difficult part of that conversation has been security concerns, update concerns, the life cycle of it. And so, Microsoft's commitment there is to bring monthly security updates as well as quarterly feature updates. And so for customers that are already have they know and have the warm and fuzzies with Microsoft as an operating system builder and maintainer, and from a security perspective, this lets them feel like, okay, this conversation about Android is less cumbersome and worrisome than it may have been if we had to get security our security team involved and do audits and do all these checks. That's the idea, and that's the thought process there. I think it's good for Microsoft. The more they're able to make these announcements about the organizations, the different companies that are getting involved, it's showing credibility and it's showing the expansion throughout a larger ecosystem of the operating system. What's interesting and fun to me to watch is you see the announcements of this company has now joined the MDEP program, but you don't know what for, right? You're like, okay, so they're now part of it. It'll be, now you get to watch and wait and see with what type of product, because it's not necessarily a one size fits all.
Yeah, Shure and MaxHub are on it, for example, but we haven't seen kit yet. So yeah, I think this year, maybe through this year into the tail end of this year, we'll start seeing like how big is the commitment, how quick is the commitment. But it does feel like it's got some motion behind it at the moment.
Fantastic. Let's move on to our next topic: occupancy status on Teams panels, now based on real-time data from Teams room devices and sensors. This is a problem I've seen throughout the industry for some time now. Before the rollout, Teams was panels indicated room availability based on reservation data only, but now it can actually use smart signals from sensors in rooms in use or not. So you don't get that sort of awkward surprise when you turn up to a meeting, you think it's empty and there's actually a meeting going on. So that was quite good. Satish, do you want to take us through that one? Why that's significant for the industry?
Yeah, I feel like, David, the way you announced it is essentially the feature. Yeah, and I think it is exciting because historically to do this, you either needed, there was an accessory in some instances, you had to install something else in the room. The ability to do this using native sensors or OEM sensors is and to have that automatically work on the panel is exciting.
And like you already mentioned, everything announced, like David, now with the sensors, there would be no such surprise as such that okay, we would be having someone already inside the meeting room where it was made available on the Teams panel side. So that's something that would not be a surprise for anyone who is joining in or going into the room as such.
Yeah, the other really exciting thing is that if you're using the check-in and auto-release feature, it's happened quite a bit that folks forget to check in and they walk in the room and then it automatically cancels the meeting. And so this able to appreciate occupancy, it can also appreciate that you're checked in without having to manually check in.
Fantastic. Let's move on to our next one then. Satish, I think we're sticking with you. It was the Microsoft Teams client live mic active volume indicator. What's your take on that one?
Now, the active live indicator, Microsoft is now bringing up the Teams application up to par with the other competitors like Zoom or Cisco WebEx as such, because those are indicators that were available within the other clients. Now we are just adding up those capabilities where you would be able to see if your mic is working perfectly or not within the Teams client. So we would be able to see it much more in the main interface as such, rather than being in the drop down menu.
Great. Let's move on to our next one then, and that is super resolution support for Microsoft Teams. Kevin, I'm going to come to you on this one. This story is about bringing high definition to Teams meetings. It was announced, I believe, night at the end of last year. What are you seeing there, Kevin? Why is this significant, and why do we all need to be in super high definition?
Well, I think, David, this is a great example of, AI that's just working in the background, right? There's been a huge focus over the past year or so on this generative AI and, but this really is saying, hey, can we use artificial intelligence to, in low bandwidth situations, do what AI does great, which is fantastic pattern matching. And so the idea is that even though you have a 300, 360 video, it can upscale it to 720 or 1080. So I think that this is a fantastic feature for some particular situations. I do, just to keep things real. Cisco announced the same. They called it exactly the same thing, super resolution, back in 2023 as part of their WebEx AI codec, which would use that same pattern matching to upscale video and kind of fill in the gaps on poor audio. But I think, I applaud Microsoft for bringing this. I think, this is the kind of AI that just hangs out in the background and just makes our collaboration experience better. So I'm excited about this.
I think I need some of that AI because it works under sort of poor network conditions as well, isn't it? So that's a great little feature. So should we move on to our next one, which is the new calendar in Microsoft Teams? It's now available. Amanda, I'm going to come to you on this one. Give us your overview of what's going on here with calendar in Microsoft Teams right now, and what kind of experience is it delivering for users?
Yeah, so up until now, we've been having the Teams calendar and we've been having a separate calendar in Outlook, which makes no sense because we're using the Outlook calendar in Teams. So finally, we will have a streamlined experience where it looks exactly the same as both in Outlook and in Teams. And going from that pretty basic experience in Teams into giving much more possibilities. So, for example, we will have uh, settings where we can change how we want the calendar to look, like the work days, working location, et cetera, et cetera. So much richer experience. And this also means that we will have the same capability with Copilot as we'll have in Outlook. And also, if maybe someone else here wants to fill in, because I haven't used Microsoft Places a lot, but my understanding is that now we will also have all of the nice Places parts inside Teams, and as we have in the Outlook calendar.
That's right, yeah, because it's the Outlook web calendar, the Places stuff rolls in there. So for people that haven't rolled out the new Outlook client, which people are still somewhat on the fence about, you get the Places abilities in the new Outlook calendar in the new Teams, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to have the same view as we have in Outlook, so why should we have different calendars? So
it's only taken us 7 years to agree on the same calendar. That's good.
That's true. But finally here, and it's a pretty easy toggle back and forth if we want to still use the old, more basic calendar, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, from my perspective, we see Microsoft doing what Microsoft does very well, is they throw out a lot of different ways to do the same thing, whether it's the classic Outlook, Outlook New, the Teams calendar, or if it's your to-do list, and then they eventually consolidate it and make it easier for people. So once again, excited about this because I think, Amanda, as you said, it really made no sense that you could do part of the things in Teams and then you still had to kind of go into Outlook to do other things. So once again, it's nice that Microsoft's consolidating and making end user experience better for all of us.
So basically, this is a similar kind of a consolidation where they initially consolidated the contacts into the People's app, and now they are consolidating the calendars as such as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of coming together as one system. Your contacts in Outlook/Exchange and now your calendar.
So before we go, should we do a quick recap of the events coming up over the next few months? Tom, I know you've got a list in front of you. What have you got on that list?
Yeah, so just off the back of ISE, which is kind of the kickoff of the season. So in the the kind of online space, we've got Michelle Bowman on Teams Fireside Chat doing a recap of ISE. And later this month, on the 26th of February, we've got Abram Jackson doing Copilot Fireside Chat, which should be really good. For in-person, we've got the Microsoft Teams UC User Group London on the 26th of February. So that will be at Shure's offices, should be good fun. And then in terms of next big events, we've got Enterprise Connect starting 17th of March. Obviously, a really big event for our space. Ilya's keynoting that one, so there'll be lots of Teams news there. And looking a bit further out, we've got Comms VNext in April over in Denver. So that's a really big community one. And even further out still, then Comms Verse in the UK in June. So some really big events coming out. Oh, and I should mention as well, Get CS LATAM as well, which is later this month. So that should be a good one over in Mexico City.
Fantastic. So without further ado, Amanda, Satish, Kevin, Ryan and Josh, and of course, Mr. Tom Arbuthnot, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next one.